my name is Jeri. I am a Reiki master, a registered Kundalini yoga instructor. I'm also a Donna Eden Level 1 energy healer and energy medicine. And today we're going to talk about the spiritual dark age, or AKA the Kali Yuga, which we're currently in right now. So before I forget, please do like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in this content. I'm going to continue to upload videos around about this. And of course, I've got my witch's hat on because we're just a few days away from Halloween, which is one of my favorite times. It's definitely a time that, in Celtic traditions, they would reap the harvest. It was a really big harvest and kind of coming into the new year. So this is a great time to kind of reflect on all the great spiritual nuggets and health and wellness nuggets that we've gotten over this year and really reap the benefits of that harvest. Before we go into the presentation, another thing I wanted to cover is just the reason why I'm making this video. For a long period of time, I really kind of turned my back on anything religious and spiritual through kind of my own spiritual trauma. A lot of it had to do with the evidence-based concepts that have come up in the recent world. A lot of times we're told that, where's the evidence to that? And we are kind of, considered not as intelligent when we look into more of the esoteric concepts or the concepts that we can be considered kind of more woo-woo. And I just need to talk about these things because there has been some information that I have gathered through my journey, and I found it to be very helpful with bridging the gap and understanding that science is very important, but at the same time, so is spiritualism and being able to connect to more of the unseen world and really being able to bridge the gap between it. And so let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so we're living in what is called kind of the spiritual dark age. This is really kind of a time that humanity is very removed from our ancient concepts of spiritualism, healing, and also knowledge. And that might kind of seem weird to you, like considering that we live in the digital age and there's so much knowledge out there, but a lot of times we're removed from it, right? I know for myself over, the past decade, I probably knew more about reality TV shows and about like Game of Thrones and a lot of things that really didn't help me heal and understand the world around me, but were very like interesting things that I could talk to with other people that had similar interests. And so that's why I kind of say, like, even knowledge, like we really are. And of course, this is also a big concept of the Kali Yuga. So this age is actually right now is primarily focused on evidence-based or concepts that are coming from science only. And I know for myself, a lot of times when I tried to share kind of more the spiritual side or that side, I get those eye rolls from people and they're like, that's not scientifically proven, or give me the evidence. Which a lot of it now is being proven through physics. So we can actually provide evidence to the existence of energy. And it's just very interesting that we constantly shut down the experiences of others because we find that the concepts that have worked for us are considered best. So let's kind of break this down. So this era is actually the result of the Enlightenment period. And this was the period of like the age of reason. And it occurred during the 17th century. This concept actually was supposed to explore, this concept was actually to improve humanity by exploring our universe through the concept of science. It wasn't really ignoring or turning our back on spiritualism. Sometimes you'll hear people will say that it was like the anti-religious period. But even during that time, the people who were focusing on the age of reason still had a high connection to spiritualism, including people who were coming out of the Catholic Church or had, some type of spiritualistic views. A key note that I wanted to just bring up here are a few people that really kind of helped me change my mind to be able to explore the more spiritual side of myself. Because we oftentimes will say like science is without religion, it's without spiritualism, yet the concepts that we have today are based on the concepts that, key scientists have provided us over the centuries. And during this time, these scientists actually believed in an afterlife or a spiritual realm, or were considered to be highly religious. as it was actually very uncommon to be an atheist or somebody who did not believe in a higher power during this time. So, an example of this would be Isaac Newton. He was a mathematician, he was a physicist, he was an alchemist, he was an astronomer, and he was a theologian. Secretly, he actually made predictions. So, he hid this journal that he wrote in, and he hid it until after his death. It wasn't discovered until much, much later. I think like 300 years after his death. And he actually secretly made predictions about how the end of the world was going to happen. And he actually interpreted the Bible. And he actually found that being able to explore these kind of more spiritual concepts and more of like the psychic concepts helped his search for knowledge, including the concepts that he created for science. Another one is Rene Descartes. He's a French philosopher and scientist. So in this 1619, he had three prophetic dreams. This actually inspired the scientific method, and this encouraged scientists to question and test their hypothesis through experimentation and deductive reasoning, which is what we actually use as a scientific method today. And that was actually a result of prophetic dreams. This is not crazy, but it's so amazing, right? Albert Einstein is another example. He's a theoretical physicist, and a lot of the current concepts that we have today would not exist without the knowledge that he provided us. And he believed that spirit is manifested in the law of the universe and had it. I actually, again, he influenced a lot of what we do in modern physics today. Even his equation, E equals mc squared, is basically just stating that energy equals mass times velocity squared, which basically states you can't have mass unless you have energy. So energy is another concept of things that we cannot see, but does actually exist. Even Tesla, Nikola Tesla, I should say, he explored Hinduism concepts that helped him to explain the terminology and philosophy of the physical universe. And he even quoted a line of the Gita after the atomic bomb was dropped, just kind of proving how relevant it was in his head while developing these very big scientific concepts. So the issue that I found for myself of relying purely on evidence based is that not only we're ignoring the human experience, so you'll see it throughout the world throughout time, right? We had a whole bunch of explorers that would go into different countries and continents, and they'd find new people, and they would have all the concepts that were provided to them by either their ancestors, their gods, their creators. And a lot of times, because it didn't align with what their concepts were, they would completely just be like, that's nonsense. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. A lot of times they were kind of called like demonologists or witches, or they would use kind of derogatory terms to talk about these people because their concepts really didn't match. So a lot of times we ignore the human experience. And science, again, can only prove what has already existed. We're just proving what exists already. So just because science exists doesn't mean things in the world don't exist. So we could be reading something in a spiritual book, and there's a lot of times it's misinterpreted, but a lot of times it actually starts to click and it makes sense. So we really need imagination, we need technology, we need knowledge to prove to prove more of these spiritual or ancient concepts. And so I wanted to give you guys a few examples. So these are ones that really started to open my eyes. So this first one I absolutely love. So the Dogon people of Malay, West Africa, when they were first discovered by the explorers, they talked a lot about Sirius, and that's where their gods came from. And the explorers laughed it off a bit. They were just like, "What are you talking about, Sirius B? There's only Sirius A, and your gods were not right on that, and we're not going to pay attention to what you're saying." And again, our teachings are key. Later on in 1862, we could actually prove, because Sirius B did exist, but it was so dim you couldn't actually see it with the naked eye. So it kind of just opens your eyes a bit of, how did this tribe know about Sirius B if they couldn't even see it? Because even the Dogon tribe, they even said, we couldn't see it. It's just our gods told us that they came from Sirius B. which was the companion star of the star that you could see, which was Sirius A. So it's very interesting, and you can like go out and Google these concepts. It's very great. Geometry is another example, like the Pythagorean theorem, which was first known in ancient Babylon, but it wasn't actually proven until 1,000 years after his death. So this was considered a concept that people were using, and a lot of people didn't know what to do with it, and weren't provided the knowledge that he was provided in order to really understand until almost like 1,000 years later. There's another concept where there were people who were talking about a cosmic shell that surrounded and protected the Earth. And again, that was a very woo-woo concept. What are you talking about? Like, there's nothing outside the Earth besides the stars, the moon, the sun that we can see, because the geomagnetic field really can't be seen with the naked eye. It's a type of like energy field that we have over top the Earth. And this actually protects us from harmful, like charged particles that's actually emitted from the sun, solar winds, and also protects us from cosmic radiation, which is huge. We need that protection. So again, something that was like considered not really well known and provided to people from their creators, ancestors, and gods that later on got proved by science, which is fantastic. Um, the fact that the Earth was round, right? This was actually believed by ancient Greeks. It was actually proven around the third century BC and is well known today. Because as we've actually traveled outside of our own atmosphere, outside of Earth, and traveled into space and gone to the moon, we can actually look at Earth and we can see that it's round. And we're able to observe these types of things from telescopes. So it's fantastic because the Greeks actually already knew it without even having to see it. Another discovery that I found was very interesting is 3,400-year-old skull that they actually found. And this was actually missing like a square piece in the skull. And they actually believe that this was because in the written documents is that they were performing brain surgery that was taught to them by their gods. And this is actually just really one example of surgeries that had happened. They also have a surgery where a man's leg was amputated. And again, they said that this procedure was given to them by their gods, their ancestors, or their creators. So it's very intriguing. Another thing is the Vedic text. So the Vedic text, which is the Hinduism text, provides a lot of information on the sun, the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Rahu, and what they call Ketu before having the technology to see it. It's again also provided by their ancestors and what they consider to be their deities. So the Kali Yuga, or the Dark Age, is described in the Mahabharata in chapter 190, prophecy for the future. I actually have the Mahabharata and I actually do read it. And I find this one is one that I'm always so fascinated by, because when you go and read it, first of all, a few things like really trip me up. Number one, I think that future should just be scribbled out and should just be the prophecy of right now. But that's just kind of my interpretation of it. But according to Vedic texts, this will be a period that energy, intellect, and physical strength of humanity will be at its lowest. And there are 9 characteristics of the Kali Yuga. So the first thing is that there's going to be a huge uptake. So this is like spiritual corruption, where you may have any kind of like churches, temples, all of these concepts actually monetizing more than they're actually focusing on the spiritual concept or actually helping humanity. They're just kind of lining their own pockets and doing their own things. Even from a governmental perspective, the book does actually talk about high taxations within the government and not actually protecting their citizens and putting kind of monetary means over their citizens. And then also within people, right? We're a product of our environment. So if there are spiritual and government bodies which affect us on a regular basis, like even just kind of watch the elections, the way they talk to each other, right? These things actually get into our subconscious brain and start to change the way that we think and we feel. So even people start to become a bit more corrupt. And we can kind of see it in the news. There's a lot of things kind of being shown in the news recently where people are being arrested for a lot of corruption. So another thing it says in the actual, so this is in quotes because it was in the Mahabharata. Of course, it was originally in Sanskrit. This is the translation that I got from the English version. And so there's going to be an increase in thieves. Dishonesty will be very common, and many will not know who is actually being honest or dishonest. And I love thinking about this, like with the misinformation age, right? We have so much information out there, but we live in a world of dualities. So one person may see it as light, and the other person may see it as dark. And it's really up to you to be able to discern what you believe this world is and how you want to live out your life. Signs of irresponsibility. This is to the environment and also within the self. So, one of the lines I pulled from the Mahabharata, again, this is the English translation, it's originally written in Sanskrit. The land will be affected with death and famine. And as you can see, even today, we're seeing a lot with the war and a lot what was going on beforehand in Africa. There has been a lot of death and there has been a lot of famine here on Earth. An increase in violence and war, and again, I don't have to repeat it, we know that that is going on currently. Lack of religion, spiritualism, or pretending to be a believer. So somebody who may wear the outfits of somebody who is a believer, or maybe they wear like jewelry to represent the specific religion or spiritualism that you grew up with, but you don't really believe it. You just kind of, it's just something that like makes me feel comfortable and safe. And another thing I thought was interesting is the Mahabharata actually says that there is going to be an increase in atheism. And I have a little thing here with old ways being obsolete. Oh, there's one. I absolutely love this one. It says in the Kali Yuga, like women will not listen to their husbands. And it's like really, I always like crack up with my husband, just be like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I can't listen to you. It's the Kali Yuga, right? So like it's definitely very interesting because again, this is a book from 7,000 years ago, and its predictions are pretty spot on. I just find it so interesting. Lack of injustice. Again, I feel like this is very prevalent in our day today. We have a lot of people who have gone to jail, and there's been a lot of cases where they're reopening them because they just don't think that the evidence was looked at properly. Just a lot of stuff going on with injustices going on. Lack of family ties, lack of tolerance. Humans will be prideful and want what others have, and they won't actually be happy with what they have already. Okay, so let's create a new realities. Kind of how I looked at it, right? I was able to start to bend my mind a bit because again, I was a very evidence-based kind of gal. I really was when I was younger, I was very spiritual. And as I progressed through college and throughout my career, and I actually had a little bit of spiritual trauma myself, but I really started to buy into the concept of things have to be proven. Where is the science? And even now we're seeing that like studies, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie on Netflix. It's called Pain Hustlers. With Emily Blunt. I absolutely love her as an actress. She's fantastic. But it's so interesting because, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this, kind of fast forward maybe 30 seconds. But if you haven't already seen it's amazing because they just show how they used studies to skew the way that doctors would sell a specific medication. And, they were telling them specifically like things weren't addictive when in all actuality, when you looked at the studies, they skewed it in a way that they really couldn't. You definitely watch it, but they skewed the study a lot. We're finding out more and more that corporations have actually funded a lot of the studies because they're the ones with the money, and they've actually skewed some things in order to increase their product and their actual bottom line when it comes from a monetary perspective. So it's very interesting. Again, so it sounds very familiar today because according to the Vedic text, we are currently in the Kali Yuga. So we are in the spiritual dark period right now. And as individuals, we may not have the ability to control others' behaviors or change even what they do. We do have the ability, however, to change our own, right? Every decision we make today has an impact on our future, right? So the key is to be the change you want to see in the world. So be open, be true to yourself, and don't care what others think. Many of the revolutionary thinkers that we had in the past had to think outside of the norm in order to shed light on some of these concepts for humanity. So just kind of go back to, I think, the second slide, second or third slide that I went over, where we have like Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla. I mean, even if you go into the kind of even further research into Nikola Tesla, I mean, he was being kind of shushed by a lot of people in society because he created this device and he believed he actually was picking up a signal from Mars. And instead of being able to explore, what does this mean? Is there something that exists on Mars? Is something going on? They just shut him down and would not fund a lot of his projects. So this is an example where you see kind of even science being shut down because we're too afraid to be open. And through your efforts, you can actually influence. So I love this. There's a quote out there like, clean up your corner of the world and you'll have an impact on the entire world. And that's because when others see you living a more peaceful, happy, and high vibrational life, they're going to want to do the same thing. Everybody doesn't want to stay in this negative place, especially when we're at the height of mental health problems. We have a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, which depression actually just used to be called melancholy back in the day. But, we have these kind of very hard mental health things that are going on. So if you're able to change your own mental health, you can actually affect those that and help their own mental health. We don't all have to, pay the high cost of going to therapy or having to go into these medical things. And a lot of times, what we can do is we can shift our own reality at home. Great, which is fantastic, right? I mean, you can definitely seek out, you can seek out help. You can see like self-help books. I'm always reading these books. There are ways that you don't have to do them for free, but if you wanted to, we do live in the information world. You could really start patchworking and doing all of this for free. You don't necessarily have to pay for it, right? It creates that ripple effect and that can shift humanity, and we can all kind of go into more of that responsible future, environmentally, physically, mentally. I mean, the possibilities are really just endless. Remember, we can see the world as either dark and corrupt, which, I mean, it really might be at this moment, but it doesn't have to impact our behaviors. Humanity, even ourselves, we can rise above it. So I love this whole thing about spellbound. Don't be spellbound, right? The words that we use are going to inform our subconscious brain and our belief systems. So, a couple of them that come to the top of my mind is ignorance is bliss. One person cannot change the world. If you can't it's supposed to be, if you can't beat them. Okay, sorry. This is, if you can't beat them, then join them. I put if you can't beat them, but I meant beat, BEAT. If you can't beat them, join them. So humanity is not far from the days. I mean, there were days throughout history. I mean, literally, if you look back in history, it starts at like 400 BC that we started book burnings. We started ignoring whole cultures. And because we didn't really understand what they were saying, we burned their books. We burned their knowledge that were provided to them by the gods. So think about how further along in humanity we would be if we wouldn't have gotten rid of that type of information. We're living in the digital age and there's a lot of information out there. And again, a lot of the information, we have misinformation. We've got information that you're not sure that you can trust. The one thing that you can start to do is to start turning and tuning into yourself and learning that we live in a world of dualities. There's dark and there's light. You can either believe it's doom and gloom, or you can start to believe that it's happiness and bliss and actually start affecting your behaviors. Like, for an example, this is such a small thing, but even having to do the dishes, right? We complain about a lot of things that we have to do these days. And really, honestly, it's just changing our mentality and realizing I get to do the dishes. Not only do I have a sink, do I have a home, do I have the things to clean my dishes? Do I have dishes, right? That I got a meal to eat on that dish that now I have to wash it. We have to start looking at the world as abundance and stop looking at lack, right? That's what they were talking about, the Mahabharata. Like, we're constantly looking at what we don't have versus actually looking at what we do have. So it's time to agree that ignorance is not bliss and knowledge is the right of humanity, and knowledge truly is power. What we do with that knowledge will shape not only our world, but humanity as a whole. So I hope this concept is as interesting as to you, and definitely feel free to dive into some of the concepts on your own. You can Google it. They're all very interesting. And if you're interested in how you can kind of shape your reality, I do recommend that you go out and watch my other videos on limiting beliefs, on chakras, on being spellbound, or again, you can book an appointment with me and begin shifting your reality and creating a bright future that is full of abundance, bliss, and where you just feel free. And when I say free, it's really just free thinking the way you want to think, because we oftentimes forget that that is a huge virtue. Again, like I found out through my wound in spiritualism that people had affected my thoughts on things, even though like being an atheist didn't feel great to me. For me, I was kind of rejecting a religion that I only had access to, right? I didn't have access in my small town to all these other esoteric concepts or concepts throughout the world. But thank you to the digital age, I have been able to expand my mind because I've been able to like explore these concepts. So these are the kind of the concepts that we'll go over in, the sessions, which is just really fun because you get to start to shift your reality. So thank you so much, loves. I appreciate you joining me for this video. Again, my name is Jeri Stroop. I am a certified Reiki master, registered Kundalini yoga instructor, certified level 1 Donna Eden energy healer, and energy medicine practitioner. You can go out to my website if you'd like to learn more at www.energeticturtle.org. And again, please, if you liked this video, please hit that little thumbs up button, give it a like. It just lets me know that you like these kind of videos and I'll do more on them, or even subscribe to my channel. If you do that, you'll get a notification every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a fantastic and safe Halloween. Bye.